Thank you for choosing a Royal Spa float pod. The first video showed how to deliver and set up the float pod. This video will show the tools, mechanics, and components to operate and maintain the float pod. First, the tools you'll need to set up and maintain the pod. You'll need a screwdriver, an Allen wrench, a nail set, a 1/2-inch wrench, a hammer, and an O-ring wrench or caliper. Here's the motor and the mechanicals outside of the float pod. The pod arrives with a setting between 30 and 86.5 degrees. Press up or down and set to set the temperature level. This is the high limit button that indicates if you need to clean the skimmer. Skimmer cleaning is shown later in this video. This is the auxiliary input from the office to the pod. Here are the components inside the pod. This is the skimmer basket. These are the 2 thermal pickups. This reports the temperature of the tank thermostat and the temperature display on the pod's computer. This is the light, and it is turned on and off with a button on the inside panel of the pod. The button sticks out so that you can feel it in the dark. On the inside of the pod are the music, light, and intercom buttons. This is the circulation jet or primary return. When the session is over, the jet gently pushes the salt solution forward through the tank and begins circulating the solution. This is the ozone purification system. It's more powerful than chlorine, is completely natural and safe, and eliminates bacteria, viruses, organic material, and yeast. It purifies the salt solution to keep the solution fresh, clean, and odor and bacteria free. This is the suction that is the required 3 feet from the skimmer. It pulls the salt solution through the filter and pump to purify the water in the pod. On the lid of the pod is a vent. It provides natural air circulation that flows directly into the pod to provide fresh air during a float when the lid is closed. Attaching the equipment. Begin by placing the O-rings on the UV purification device coupler. Then screw the couplers together inside the back of the pod. Plug in the ozonator and attach the tube to the purification device. Then open the gate valve and attach the clip. The gate valve allows maintenance to be done on the pump or electrical equipment without having to drain the tank. Simply remove the clip, close the valve, and give it a quarter turn to the right to shut off the valve. Adding water and salt. Now that your valves are open, the couplers are tight, and everything is hooked up, you are ready to add water and salt to your pod. First, remember that the fill line on the skimmer is where the final solution, water and salt, will need to be. If desired, make a small removable mark 2 inches below that fill line, and that will indicate how high you need to fill the pod with just water before adding the salt. Filling the pod. Begin by opening the skimmer cap and placing the hose into the skimmer to prime the pump and push out any air. Make sure the nut on the filter is loose, allowing air to move through the system. Gradually turn on the water from a clean water source free of rust, hard water, or debris. Once the pump is primed with water, approximately 10 minutes, the hose will be pushed out of the skimmer and you may continue to fill the pod to a fill line 2 inches below the labeled fill line on the skimmer panel. If there are leaks, check 5 locations for drips and use the O-ring wrench to snug up the coupler. Here are the 5 places to check for leaks. Heating the pod. Once the pod is filled to the right water level, you may begin heating the pod while constantly checking for any leaks inside the electrical panel at the back of the pod. Remember, to heat the pod, make sure the pod is plugged into a recommended GFCI circuit. Then, press the up arrows on the thermostat to 94 degrees and press Set. Salt will best dissolve in warm water, so wait at least 10 hours to add the salt until the pod is fully heated. Make sure the circulation pump is running and water is moving around the tub. While the water is heating and before adding the salt, this is the time to add the final bead of caulk around the inner edge of the pod lid. It will allow time for the caulk to cure. Adding salt. After the water is fully heated and no leaks or mechanical problems are present, now is the time to add the 900 pounds of Epsom salt. Carefully lift a bag of salt onto the side of the pod and using a utility knife, carefully make a slit from end to end in the bag and pour the salt into the front of the pod. After several bags have been poured, carefully climb into the pod with clean bare feet and gently swirl the salt around at the front of the pod. You do not want to push the salt into the components at the back of the pod. Continue pouring and gently mixing until all of the salt is in the pod and the water level has risen to the correct fill line. Note, typically you'll need to replace about a half pound to a pound of salt per person after each float to keep the correct buoyancy and salt solution levels. Cleaning and maintaining the float pod. Here are the tools and products you'll need to clean and maintain the float pod. You'll need a microfiber cloth and household bleach to clean the pod lids and pod room as needed. Make sure to follow directions for a diluted bleach recipe. Polishing compound for removing fingerprints and scuff marks on the pod. Note, rubbing compound is more abrasive, and some pod owners have used it to intentionally create a permanent eggshell look on the pod, thus cutting down on fingerprint marks. Magic eraser, to use around the water line of the pod to remove dirt and debris. Hydrogen peroxide. Spray it 3 inches above the water line all around the inside of the pod to completely clean and disinfect where the solution surface and pod meet. Skimmer. This removes any particles in the solution. Hydrometer. This is one way to test the salt density of the solution. Another is by simply floating. The solution should be between the middle of the ear and the temple when floating. Half pound to 1 pound of Epsom salt per person to be added after each float. Cleaning the filter. First, open the bleed valve to allow air to escape, making the filter cover easier to open. Then, loosen and remove the collar. Then, remove the lid. Then, remove the filter. The filter may be cleaned using a hose or sink with running water or rinsing it off with hydrogen peroxide. Replace the filter, the lid, the collar, and close the bleed valve. The filter should be checked and cleaned every week for the first several months due to natural debris in the salt. After that, it can be cleaned every 2 weeks. Cleaning the skimmer. Once again, here is the high limit button that indicates if you need to clean the skimmer. Twist open the nut and remove the skimmer basket. Take off the skimmer basket and use a clean cloth to remove any debris. Place the skimmer basket back inside the skimmer and tighten the nut. Cleaning the intercom button. If the intercom button fills with salt, simply use a pencil to push the button and pour very warm, clean water over the button to release the salt. Maintaining the ozonator and circulation pump. If the motor revs and shuts down, that is an indication of air in the line. To avoid this occurrence, make sure that during the initial installation, you place the hose into the skimmer and fill the pump first. To clear an airlock, contact a Royal Spa technician immediately. To clean the ozone injector when it fills with salt, simply take a cup of clean, warm water, remove the hose from the circulation pump, and place it into the water until the hose fills with water instead of salt. Then replace the hose. The ozone injector should be cleaned every 2 weeks. Thank you for watching this video on how to set up, fill, and maintain your Royal Spa float pod. If you have any questions, please contact the Royal Spa Technical Support Team.